Daniel Harris, football writer. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Hiya.
Daniel, any case to be made here that they'd let it roll this long, Manchester United, in terms of making the appointment, that they may as well have just let it roll to the end of the season, see does he finish top four and make the call then?
I think they probably had to make the appointment now on the basis that it was his job provided United don't collapse. So I think that if they want to sign players, they need to start preparing to sign those players now. And so if the only reason not to do it is there might be a collapse and they might have to get rid of him, I think it's fair that they say, well, they assume there's not going to be that collapse, and that enables them to sign players and be able to tell them who the manager's going to be. And so I think that it's also something that will lift everyone at the club for the next few weeks, rather than having the constant, is he going to be the manager, is he not? The players come into work now after the international break and after United have had a minor wobble, knowing that this guy that they like and they're enjoying working for, they're going to continue working for him. So I think it's fair enough that they've done it now.
Yeah, I often wonder if that's a factor that players, whether they give a toss about what manager is there or what's going to happen in the next season, Daniel. So you might just pick up on that point for us, if you could, just in relation to the players, whether they give a toss or not, and whether that's a factor in Manchester United's thinking when they make this appointment.
Yeah, I think that United would have thought about lots of things when making the appointment. The interesting thing about Ole is that, unlike any other manager who gets the job, he has justified his credentials for a particular job by doing that particular job. And no other manager can say that they've done that. So if you look at who the other candidates were, Pochettino, Allegri, they have credentials that they've proved in a different kind of way. But I think what we've seen since Fergie retired and since before Fergie is that managing United sometimes is different to managing other clubs. David Moyes was a good manager of Everton. He was someone who I personally, I thought was never suited for managing United. So he perhaps is an outlier. But if you look at Louis van Gaal and Mourinho, Louis van Gaal had just had an amazing World Cup. He'd done some amazing things in his career in football. So his life, his reputation in football was not contingent on what he did at United. But somehow he still seemed to freeze under pressure. Mourinho also, you felt like he'd been given the job of his life and he seemed determined not to appreciate it and to see it as a burden. And Solskjaer is not like that. He's a very different personality to those kind of people, and he understands football and he understands life in a very different way. And I think the way that he understands life, that life is something to be enjoyed, life is something to be experienced, life is something that's meant to make you happy, those are qualities that he shares with the people that have succeeded as manager of United. And so I think that you can make reasons as to why he shouldn't have got the United job. He hasn't got the experience, but actually, if you look at the things that he's done in the job, for me, the reasons why I think that he might fail are because it seems too good to be true, and things that seem too good to be true usually are too good to be true, and also because if most managers took this job, they would fail at it. When I look at the characteristics and the qualities that are specific to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they all point towards him being quite a good fit for the job.
Yeah, and what he will have learned about life as well is it's all about being in the right place at the right time in a lot of these things, especially in football. And you were tweeting about that yesterday, saying, imagine how Pep Guardiola's career would have gone had he taken, say, a job in Getafe. And I mean, you can make the comparison between Solskjaer and Cardiff as well in that respect, that he did take the Getafe job in his career graph. Like, I do wonder, Daniel, are we still a little bit judging in our subconscious of what happens with Solskjaer at Cardiff City?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe some people are. I'm not, because I can see that jobs are very different. Alex Ferguson failed at St Mirren. That was a very different job to managing Manchester United. Solskjaer failed at Cardiff, but I mean, I was amazed he took that job in the first place, and I was even more amazed that Fergie advised him to take it. Obviously, you can see why he did. It was a Premier League job, but what he did there will teach him what not to do. Like, don't try and impose a style on players who aren't suited for that style. And I think we're seeing that at United. I'm sure he does not want to play in the way that United are playing at the moment, which is against teams who are rubbish, they're playing on the front foot, but against better teams, they're not able to dominate midfield, so they're playing on the counter. And this is what Louis van Gaal criticised him for in that big interview he did with BBC, where he said Solskjaer is just playing defensive football and getting results. I don't really think that's true. I think what he's doing is he's tailoring his team and his tactics according to what he knows the opposition can do. And so he is playing in a particular way at the moment in the big games. United tend to defend quite deep in the big games and look to play their football when there's space on the counter, because that suits the fact that United can't control midfield and they've got fast attacking players. And so that's very different to what he tried to do at Cardiff, where he turned up mid-season and tried to get a bunch of championship footballers mainly playing passing football. Like, that's not going to work. You're not going to achieve that in a short period of time. And I think what we've seen from Solskjaer in the last few months is he really good at man management? Yeah, he's really good at that. He's really good at making people happy and getting the best of them. He's been pretty good tactically. I thought he fell down badly against Wolves, but otherwise his in-game changes have been excellent. His game plans have been excellent. So the only other element of management that we don't really know about yet is what is his eye for a player like. And we could say he's done a pretty good job of that by picking the best players that he has at United so far. But when he has to actually buy players and get rid of players, that is a difficult thing to do, and he's probably not going to have a lot of margin for error because he's going to maybe have money for between 2 and 4 players this summer, and he really needs to get almost all of them right. And as we know from looking at any manager, even the greatest managers, that very rarely happens. Like a 50% hit rate on players that you buy as successful is pretty good.
And that kind of ties in with something that Van Gaal was also saying in that BBC interview, that Manchester United is a commercial club, not a footballing club. And I was just mentioning a few moments ago that Matt Dickinson in the Times this morning has taken that point on and says that it was a good day yesterday for the Glazers, simply in making United more appealing. But that is definitely not the same as putting the fear into the club's rivals at home and abroad. What do you think of that, Daniel?
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, no one is going to look at the appointment of Solskjaer, United's rivals, and think, oh dear, what's he going to do? But people probably felt more fear about Mourinho and Van Gaal, and that didn't work. So I don't really think it matters very much, because whatever fear factor there is, it goes or develops according to what results are. And I would think that teams that are playing United now are more fearful than they have been pretty much at any time since Fergie left. And they will either be fearful or not fearful according to what United do under Solskjaer. So I don't really think it's about that. But the point about United being a commercial entity is a fair one. One of the reasons I'm sure that the Glazers were pleased to appoint Ole is that he was cheap. And if United had to try and get Pochettino out of Spurs, that would not have been cheap. And I wonder whether the money that they've saved on Pochettino will be put back into the team, because really the Glazers want to finish in the top 4 every season, because that enables them to take a maximum amount of money out. If they put any more money in trying to win the league, then there's not that much more money to be put in. And plus, you could put all the money in the world into United, and you might still not get more points than Manchester City. Who knows? Like, trying to win the league is always going to be a punt, but you can do quite a lot to make sure that you finish in the top 4, and that's what they want to do. So I definitely wouldn't trust the Glazers to bankroll United according to what United need to be bankrolled, according to how City are bankrolled, and just according to what United's money is, like how much money there should be available to put into the club. But there are some really good players in the club already. There are some really good young players. I would say if they bought the right 2 players, then United would have a good chance of challenging for the title next season. If they bought 3 or 4 players and they were right, then I'd have a bet on them, I guess. I mean, I might have a bet on them anyway because I'm an idiot. But I don't think they're as far away as people think if they get the right players in next. But we don't know if Solskjaer is good at picking those players, never mind if those players are available or if the money for them is available.
Well, that's sort of the one point that I want to pick up on. And like, United have obviously demonstrated that they can and generally do invest quite a lot of money in the transfer window. But the Cardiff City example, look, I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here in terms of what happens with Solskjaer next season, like, we don't know. There's a whole bunch of variables that will suddenly come into play that haven't been necessarily in play now, in terms of the pressure that comes, the added pressure I think that comes with being the permanent manager, and whether he's got an eye for a player or not. Like, the evidence of Cardiff City was, I think he might have about 17 players when he was there. I appreciate he's dealing with a totally different scouting network. You're looking for a different type of player. There's far less of a budget obviously involved there as well. There was a lot of players that just didn't do it for him. Some of those players that would have come in, Adam Lafondra, Juan Cala, Joe Ingeberga, Makeda, I mean, flops generally. I mean, I know there was a couple of exceptions to that. I suppose what I'm trying to ask is what the evidence of Solskjaer having an eye for a player, or whether that matters at a club like Manchester United, because he's not going to be making these decisions on his own, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to have help with people recommending players, and also at some level, in a way, the players that Man United sign, you or I could pick. So when Alex Ferguson signed Wayne Rooney or Rio Ferdinand, those were great purchases, but they didn't require any skill whatsoever. It's in what you do once you've got them that is skillful. So if Solskjaer says, well, if he looks and he's got £100 million to go and spend on Jadon Sancho, let's say. We know that Jadon Sancho's a really good player. There is no skill in doing that. So because when you're shopping at the top end of the market, it's not just about skill. It's like the skill is always in building the team around it, and also in whether you can find a £40 million player who turns out to in fact be a £100 million player. So I think that with Solskjaer, what we do know is that he knows what a good player is because he was one and he played with them. At Cardiff, he wasn't buying that level of player. He was punting. Whereas at United, he knows what a midfield player is supposed to look like. So, because he played with Roy Keane, he played with Paul Scholes, he played with Michael Carrick. He has Michael Carrick available to him also. So I think that the judge of the player is going to be, as much as judging what a good player is, it's going to be buying the right player to integrate into the team that he has also. And we don't particularly know about that, but I think that when you're shopping at the top end of the market, sometimes you can just buy players that you know at least are going to be good because that everyone knows who the best players are.
He's going to get a bit of, it was a point that you lads touched on during the week as well, he's going to get a bit more leeway here than your average run-of-the-mill. You mentioned some of them a bit earlier on. He is going to, I mean, I don't know if United end up finishing outside the top four this season, maybe this this outlook generally changes, but I do feel, obviously, given the legacy that he has with the club and the start that he's had, I suppose, he's going to get a bit more leeway from the fans here.
Possibly. I mean, I think that he won't get disrespected, but then most of the other post-Ferguson managers have also been given a fair amount of leeway. People were behind David Moyes from the beginning, even though it seemed to me to be a ludicrous appointment. Van Gaal got 2 seasons. He got probably 6 months more at least than he should have done. And Mourinho also got a fair amount of time, and I don't think that anyone could say that those guys were fired early. Mourinho, I felt, also probably got a bit longer than he should have done. So I think that the reasons why those managers got sacked wasn't because the fans turned on them, although people did turn on Moyes. People had had enough of Van Gaal and they had had enough of Mourinho. In the main, there wasn't an enormous fuss from the supporters at matches about those managers. There was bits and pieces, but not what you saw, say, at Liverpool when they had Roy Hodgson, which was what got them rid of Roy Hodgson and proved to be a very smart move on behalf of Liverpool support. They got Roy Hodgson fired much quicker than he would have been fired otherwise, and Liverpool needed that at the time. So Solskjaer will get leeway because people like him, but he'll also get leeway because he's manager of United, and people know that it's a hard job. Like, people waited several years for Fergie to get it right, and it's not easy to do, particularly when you're chasing a club that is bankrolled by a country. So as long as there's that illusion of hope, and I think that's when the other managers got fired, when people had lost hope that it was going to work out. So as long as that notion of hope is there, that the club is improving, that you feel that they're going somewhere and they're going in the right direction, especially if they're playing decent football and they're playing young players, then there will be leeway and there will be tolerance because people understand that it's difficult.
Yeah. We want to get a couple of things we want to get your thoughts on, Daniel. The dart in a moment, but Liverpool Spurs, obviously, the weekend. The international break has sort of left us all with a great thirst, particularly this side of the water, to get back. Looking at some of this, the title race, obviously, this weekend, and how all that stacks up. Liverpool Spurs have hit the skids a little bit over the last while. How do you see this one going at the weekend?
I mean, it's hard to know when you come back after the break. Liverpool had just hit their stride again, and now they wouldn't have appreciated that interruption, whereas Spurs probably quite liked it because it meant that Harry Kane could go away and get himself a goal. Dele Alli has a couple more games, so now he's a bit fitter. I don't think Spurs will win at Anfield. I wouldn't be surprised if they got something out of the game, though, because if Liverpool don't get ahead early with City playing Fulham, they will start to feel some pressure. And pressure against a good team like Tottenham is not something you want to enjoy. So I think I would go for a score draw there. I think that Harry Kane is fitter and more confident, and Spurs know that they need to get something out of that game because if they get beaten, Spurs will be under big pressure, and then they're moving to their new ground, and who knows how things are going to work out. It just seems unlikely that they're going to go there, feel at home right away, and reel off a succession of momentous wins because it often doesn't happen that way. And teams they're playing will want to ruin it for them, will be inspired. So I think I would go for a score draw there. That's what I think will happen.
Okay, that's Liverpool Spurs this weekend. You have been tweeting about the retirement of Raymond van Barneveld, one of the most successful darts players, obviously, of all time. He was involved from having watched a entrance video yesterday, I think it was, which was pretty emotional and pretty bloody unbelievable as well in the context of any sporting event in Rotterdam, I believe, and he's must have been beaten and is now retired.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd be entirely surprised if he unretired himself. But what is amazing about Raymond van Barneveld is the depth of his competitive spirit. I mean, obviously, he's a brilliant dart player. You would never, that's just obvious. But the thing that's kept him going this long is the love of competition and the ability to raise his game at crucial moments. So Raymond van Barneveld was never really a scoring machine in the way that Phil Taylor was, that Michael van Gerwen is. What Raymond van Barneveld was brilliant at was where he's thrown 2 singles, finding a treble with that last dart, with 1 dart in a set of 3, and hitting those mid-ranking finishes. So 2 and 3 dart combinations of 70-something or 120, like that kind of thing. And that is about the love of competing and the ability to stay calm under intense pressure. And the fact that he's been doing it until this point tells you how much he loves competing and how difficult it's been for him to tear himself away. And if anyone's got a spare hour today, it's on YouTube. If you find yourself Raymond van Barneveld against Michael van Gerwen from the 2016 World Darts Championship, I would say that is some of the best live sport I've ever seen. And I've been to 4 European Cup finals, and it is up there with all those things. I saw one of the funniest things I've ever seen in sport, actually, was when Barney beat Michael. The crowd went absolutely wild, like the glasses were flying, the beer was flying everywhere. And I was standing in the press section, which was next to the corporate section. So various of the corporates flattened themselves against the wall that was underneath the cheap seats to avoid getting hit by beer. So people in the cheap seats leant over the wall and literally poured pint pots over the heads of the corporates, which was a lovely moment.
Any notable names in the corporate section?
No one I recognised, but I think it was just people with blazers and shirts and brown shoes. So the kind of people who no one should mind had beer over their heads.
It's not a good combination. Daniel, thanks a million as always. Cheers.